Okay. But you've disappeared from video, but please do show up on video. Um, okay, so it's your presentation that's left. I don't know if you've got slides to share or you're just going to be talking.
I do have slides, but they're very good, so I'm just gonna talk. And sorry that I missed the earlier talk, because sort of want to be in dialogue with that earlier one, but let's just go for it. Okay, so in this talk, I intend to just continue my exploration of anarcho-feminist thinking by bringing Kropotkin, his anarcho-communism, into dialogue with feminist writings on care and motherhood. In particular, I will consider how Kropotkin's claim that mutual aid and mutual support are, quote, features for the greatest importance for the maintenance of life, the preservation of the species, and its further evolution, with anthropologist Sarah Blaffer Hardy's discussion of grandmothers as others in her book, Mothers and Others, The Evolutionary Origin of Mutual Understanding. And I should explain here that mutual understanding in this context means our capacity to understand what other people are thinking and feeling. That is kind of a distinct quality of the human species, that we're able to have this theory of other minds. Anyways, so given that our central term in this discussion is evolution, my first inclination is to inquire into the meaning of this term, evolution, the study of living systems, how they develop over time. And I'm going to say that evolution is a particular case of the philosophical inquiry into what we call becoming. So the philosophical inquiry into becoming often stands in relation to the thinking of being. And being understands, the world is constituted as like permanent essences that underlie all permanent beings, all particular beings rather. And upon these substances stand our usages of nouns. Nouns are substantives. They establish stable identities and legal persons. They situate consciousness and the agency in human subjects, and so on. So, when we say that, this is that thing, or I am this person, what do we mean by that? The idea of being, it says, it's this substance. So becoming instead traces how things change over space and time, the ways in which the me right here and right now is related to the me 100 years from here, away from here. So 100 yards away from here, a second in the past or a second in the future. One of the first thinkers of becoming, Heraclitus of Ephesus, expressed this idea in his assertion that one cannot step into the same river twice, and in the motto that everything flows. That is, all individual identifiable things emerge as an effect, as the temporary assemblages of the flux of anonymous forces. Now, how does this flux of things occur? According to Heraclitus, the conflict and war constitute the dynamic tension between the creation of all things. He says war is the pater, the father, or the king, or the lord, or the patriarch of all. And some he has shown as gods, others as men. Some he has made slaves, and others free. So the logic of creation for Heraclitus already entails a certain set of patriarchal relations of political domination. Now, although the patriarchal resonances of Heraclitus' thinking aren't always so prominent, the idea that conflict is fundamental to the dynamic of becoming, to the flow of change over time, has been pretty widely influential. And, here are just a few of them. So first of all, like mechanism, like atomism. So, we kind of have this idea of, billiard balls, knocking against each other, and that sort of, the production of molecular forces crashing against each other. That's very fundamental to empiricism, to mechanism, to Newtonian forces and non-Newtonian forces. From Spinoza, we kind of get this idea that a thing its essence is constituted by its striving to persist in its own being and to increase its own power of action. From Hegel and Marx, we get this idea that all historical development occurs through conflicts between dialectically opposed forces. From Nietzsche, we get this idea that the wills to power are these fundamental forces that become expressed through persons and groups and other entities that are manifested in the strong as heroic and virtues, and the weak as resentment. And so it's not really the person who has these wills to power, but these wills to power are expressing themselves through the person and creating the person as like an epiphenomenon. And finally, Deleuze, who's kind of my target here. Deleuze kind of amalgamates these ideas from Nietzsche, Spinoza, and Bergson, understanding becoming as a process through which these designing machines create assemblages that constitute identities as temporary effects. So, in positing conflict and war as fundamental to creation, Heraclitus's model of becoming exemplifies the ways that early Greek thinking and political organization grew out of this role of the masculine warrior hero. And so my question is there a way of conceiving of becoming in terms of regeneration rather than domination and creative destruction and conflict and so forth? A little aside here, Aristotle is another example of this kind of this Greek emergence from the polis, from the war camp. And the politics, he has this idea, well, there's a lot of ways to become of having a common space, and one is the political, where the male hero or the male citizen warrior, is among equals, and then there's the home. And for Aristotle, the home is distinguished by its, by the male citizen has, domination over the slaves and the women, et cetera, et cetera. But he also talks about this other aspect of the home, that it's also the place where needs are met, where people eat together. And we still have this idea of like the companion, like sharing bread with other people. In Aristotle, though, this idea of the eating together is sort of suppressed in favor of the patriarch who controls the home. Anyways, that's an aside. So my understanding of becoming is influenced by the thinking of the French philosopher Emmanuel Levinas, who indicates that every stage of becoming is produced not from the collision of nameless forces, but rather from relationships with other persons. He describes the emergent individual as being steeped in this elemental medium, filling itself with what is other than itself. This relationship is a metabolic one, in which the nascent entity relates to its environment as nourishment, feeding from the world in order to constitute its own selfhood. However, the otherness of the world always comes to us through relations with other people. Our subsistence and persistence in the world is already constituted by a debt to other people who have provided us with the material substance for our existence. For example, the oxygen that constitutes my substance of my being once constituted the substance of another person. Similarly, or somewhat differently, actually, the products that we consume are, also, the alienated and objectified remnants of the lives of other people, produced by their living labor power, now dead, now part of my, consumptive regime or whatever. So this dynamic of human becoming isn't simply a metabolic one, but also a generational one, resulting not only from the incorporation of our environment, but also from concrete events of birthing and child raising, connecting us to generations of persons. We are neither self-created nor spontaneously emergent, but born into the world, dependent upon other people for our sustenance. And Levinas refers to this combination of material and historical debt as an anarchy, because it happens before our own origin, this profound anarchic debt. And he also refers to it as a maternity, playing off the idea of materiality and maternity, the same linguistic root, in which, quote, I am bound to other people before being tied to my own body. And, this is, that's basically what happens, in maternity, is that, you share your substance, or you get your substance from your actual human material substance from another person. So, in the book Maternal Thinking, Sarah Reddick defines the maternal standpoint, the maternal practice, not as an instinctive disposition or a specifically gendered role, but rather as a set of practices that preserve the life of the child, that nourishes their growth and prepares them for acceptance in the wider society. Given that human infants are not physically or mentally capable of taking care of themselves for extended periods of time, the maternal practice that preserves human life is essential for both individual and collective survival. And here I turn to the work of anthropologist Sarah Hardy, who can add an additional dimension to this idea of maternal practice and highlight its significance for Kropotkin's claim that mutual aid is central for evolution. Hardy explains that evolutionary development is influenced not just by the genetic materials passed down, but also the way that these genes are expressed. And that's conditional upon the entire environmental context that conditions the expression of genetic material. In particular, maternal effects are the way that the environment surrounding the mother influences the biological development of the child. So the mother constitutes the most important environment for the child. It is the child's environment, essentially. And so the quality of her survival directly determines the nature of the child's development. A woman's capacity to pass on her genetic material depends upon how well she can sustain and preserve the life of the child and sustain its growth. Historically, however, currently as well, most mothers weren't, focused exclusively on child rearing. They also had to do, some sort of labor. And in addition to raising a child, and furthermore, they've had to, raise multiple children, couldn't focus all their energies on just one. Therefore, the evolutionary success of child rearing does not rest on the mother alone, but rather on the community of caretakers around her, particularly what anthropologists refer to as allomothers, persons other than the mother, who are willing and capable of performing the task of childcare and who will return the child intact to the mother once they are done with it. The person who has been most reliable in performing this role has been the grandmother. Anthropologists have found that the grandmother, particularly the maternal grandmother, dedicate themselves to keeping both the grandchild and the mother healthy and well fed, helping out most assiduously with her youngest or least experienced daughter. Similarly, the grandmother has proven to be, more sacrificing and more and heroic as they age, more resourceful and hardworking at collecting food, and more daring in protecting children from aggressors. Hardy argues that the presence of these allomothers is especially important in human evolution and for the development of mutual aid. So the human infant is helpless for a very long period, and this long period is required for children to grow their large brains. They're helpless and growing for a long time and require a lot of coverage. And this mental development and this emotional conditioning, Hardy argues, is essential for the development of the human theory of mind, our distinct capacity as human beings among the primates to imagine what other people are thinking and feeling, and by extension to the development of pro-social, altruistic instincts, mutual aid, and so forth. And so I'd like to conclude, just what is the significance, grandmothering and intergenerational thinking for us anarchists? And I didn't quite do this, actually, but hopefully we can open up this discussion. I was once involved in a blockade against fracking materials in the Pacific Northwest. And I spoke to this indigenous Tulalip elder, and she said, quote, "The struggle is important because our planet is on fire. As an indigenous woman, I feel a duty to honor my elders and the legacy of my ancestors in caring for this Mother Earth. And moreover, I feel a responsibility to my grandchildren and the next 7 generations to stand up to the economic machinery propped up by the government and perpetuating the warming of this planet and the poisoning of the water essential to life." We find similarly in the Haudessani Constitution just this idea that in every deliberation we must consider the impact of our decisions on the next 7 generations. And this is sort of a commonplace or an often repeated idea among indigenous thinkers. However, I don't really mean to be exoticizing the indigenous experience. I don't think this multi-generational thinking is really unique to indigenous people, though perhaps most openly expressed by them. I think the idea of thinking multi-generationally is pretty common in a lot of traditional societies, and maybe it's really the oddity of our contemporary individualist, capitalist, whatever society to think about our immediate survival, and perhaps it's our fault, or was our fault, as anarchism. Or one of the potential problems of anarchism is that it is sort of, or has been a young person's movement. That's not actually true. I mean, I see, and I'm happy to see as I'm getting older, that there are old people well represented in the anarchist movement. And I wanted to write about, but I didn't write about, so I will open up for question. How can we think more intergenerationally in our practices of anarchism? So that is my talk. Thank you for listening.